Yes, I can. Click below to watch the original Sins video, or to buy Logan.
Before we start, I was just getting the comments to put at the start of the Logan video. You know, the comments that you literally just saw. And, I check my likely spam comments regularly, so, let's see what's happened. Let's find out together. What the fuck?
In 17 minutes or less, everything wrong. Spoilers with Logan.
45 seconds of logos.
Or should you say, Logons? No, you really shouldn't. I'm really sorry.
Even in a slightly apocalyptic future, can't Logan find better work than being a limo driver? It would have been much less action, but the movie right before this one about how he got to this point would sure be interesting.
Ah yes, I'm absolutely sure. Wolverine, limo driver origins, would have been a box office smash hit. Also, there's nothing really apocalyptic about this future. I mean, a few people are dicks, but, you know, we have that in the present as well.
I know Logan is an old drunken shell of his former self, but under what circumstances did he say, man, I need to park my limo on the side of the road under all these super bright billboards and take a nap?
The billboards are completely irrelevant to that, and parking your limo on the side of the road to have a nap is not an unreasonable thing to do.
Well, yes, he's old and busted now and weaker, but still, how many times do we need to see the random criminal outfit underestimates Wolverine's abilities and ends up dead because of it routine?
How many times do we need to see it? Well, we don't. But I want to see this as many times as I possibly can. Also, this scene serves really well to show us that Wolverine is weaker now. It's just showing the audience instead of telling them, which this movie is really good at doing.
Pretty sure even when you're a limo driver, you're not supposed to get drunk in full view of the funeral party. Just saying. Also, I'm beginning to think it's not officially a comic book movie unless one of the heroes is brooding next to a cemetery in at least one shot.
Oh well, that rule only really applies to non-MCU films. In an MCU film, it's really only officially a comic book movie if they build up dramatic tension, they build up dramatic tension, they build up some more dramatic tension, and then they subvert expectations by not having the thing you're expecting happen for a moment of levity.
Get the f*** away from me!
This is one of many times Wolverine will drop the F-bomb just because he can. In fact, it gets super distracting as this movie goes along.
Really, man? You don't expect Wolverine to be swearing? What? I'm guessing the only reason you found it distracting is you just started fixating on it. Just how I found it pretty distracting the way that Laura was able to slice her way through dozens of people without getting like a single drop of blood on her. Which, by the way, I'll go ahead and add a missed sin for that now.
Who is that?
I don't know, some crazy lady.
How did this crazy lady know Logan took someone to a funeral today and where the cemetery was?
Or, and bear with me here, she followed him.
This guy's not a Terminator or Bucky Barnes, but he does have a metal hand you should feel ominous about.
This movie had metal hands in it. Those movies had metal hands in them, and that's a sin.
Some movie footage taken from the unaired Wolverine episode of the acclaimed show Intervention.
And this is a sin because alcohol.
Or the pus you're wiping away from your knuckles, or the blood I wash from your clothes, or the fresh wounds in your chest.
This guy started out like a genuine character who cares, but now I see he's just an exposition machine.
Yeah, because we all know if he really cared, he would just ignore Wolverine's problems.
At the film's first script meeting, a producer asked, "We have an R rating, so what should we do?" Immediately, Tad jumped up and wrote boobs on the whiteboard, and everyone laughed.
This really isn't on you. I just want to say that in my opinion, it is pretty fucked up. You can include all of the violence from this movie on YouTube, no problem, but one pair of boobs and you've got to censor that out. As I said, it's not on you, so no sin, but I just think it's a bit backwards is all.
Although, CinemaSins didn't censor the boobs in his video, so if you want to see some boobs, CinemaSins.
Look guys, this article is some f***ing bullshit.
If you're going to send Logan for saying fuck, there's no way I'm letting you get away with it.
Gabriella could have easily bought or rented a car that Pierce didn't recognize and made the North Dakota trip herself.
Yeah, because if you're being hunted down by mercenaries, who the fuck would want to be escorted by Wolverine, am I right?
So Gabriella is dead, but what was it that finally led Pierce here? Did he go through the yellow pages and call every single motel asking about a mom and her daughter until he got the one where the manager was like, "Yes, I know who you're talking about. The little girls always f***ing shit up in the parking lot. Murder them promptly, please."
Or, you know, since this is clearly part of his job, maybe he knows how to track people. Because he's, you know, he does that. It's his fucking job.
Also, Jesus, he's known and been around her, what, 10 minutes? Why is he so certain she's not a mutant? Has Charles previously declared dozens of other children to be the one he was predicting only to be wrong, thereby giving Wolverine a reason for this instant doubt?
No, but he does know that there have been no new mutants born for 25 years, and that Charles has a degenerative brain disorder, so I think he's right to be doubtful here. This monitor is set up to really conveniently show you what's happening right outside the window that's just above it. Great!
Let's be clear, she's watching all this shit go down on the monitor, but doesn't stop eating her cereal and act until her own life is threatened. Yes, self-preservation is strong, especially with kids, but the way this plays out suggests she has zero heart and is fine munching on cornflakes while Wolverine gets the shit kicked out of him. And yeah, she saves the day here in a few minutes, but that doesn't make this moment any less cold-blooded.
So you're saying the child raised in a lab and treated as an object her whole life should just be a little more empathetic? Sure, man, whatever you say.
Shooting! She heals!
Then why bring a whole bunch of gun-toting henchmen out here, then?
If you already said then at the start of the sentence, then why say then at the end of the sentence, then? See what I was saying earlier? How is Laura not absolutely covered in blood by this point?
Hit girl, eat your heart out!
Abso-fucking-lutely!
Okay, so Logan found this phone in the motel room where Gabriella got murdered, but there are two things that bother me about him watching this video. First, the phone apparently has no auto-lock, unless Gabriella went to her settings to prevent the auto-lock. Second,
Sony. You do decently send the really well-edited documentary she has on her phone. I mean, actually, it's probably one of the first decent films with a Sony logo on it in years. But, where did she get this footage? I mean, most of it we're led to believe she filmed on her phone, so... What about this?
Logan helping Charles P. is a scene I could have gone the rest of my life without seeing, and I'd have been happy.
This scene humanizes Charles. It contributes to the portrayal of a man trying to hold on to his dignity as age takes its toll on his mind and body. It also goes a long way to showing us how Logan doesn't trust Charles to do anything on his own anymore. And this is one of the most powerful X-Men, and to see him struggle with something as simple as going to the toilet goes an amazingly long way to show us how far his situation has declined. So you can say, ew, gross, all you want, but I say, bring on the pee. I'd like to request formally that no one takes that audio clip out of context. Please? Please?
I read about a place up north.
And on that vague statement, the entirety of this movie's plot will hinge. She read about it. Thank God it's actually real. She risked kids' lives on that.
Without her, the kids would have been kept as slaves and possibly sold as super weapons. But sure, she shouldn't have tried to save them because that was an element of risk involved.
It's shocking how much Logan and Jason Bourne have in common, actually.
This movie, that movie.
If Charles is strong and imbalanced enough to cause this sort of thing, why is Logan the only individual just unfazed enough to walk and push elevator buttons and He's got healing powers and indestructible metal on his skeleton. He has zero mind powers whatsoever, though this movie is named after him, and perhaps that's enough.
I guess I'd say it's probably not affecting him so much because his brain is surrounded by adamantium. And it's already been established in the X-Men franchise that certain metals can prevent mind powers from working.
I guess you prefer me pharmaceutically castrated, rambling on.
That's literally you with or without medication.
Sure, he's pharmaceutically castrated with or without medication.
Well, the government-funded hate squad does at least know how to find a good sunset to pose in front of.
You don't have to find a sunset, Jeremy. They just sort of happen once a day.
Nate really loves horses, and drawing pictures of horses, and generally all things horse. In fact, this is an orgy of evidence that this kid loves him some horses. But don't pigeonhole him. He's really into deathcore bands and Abraham Lincoln, too.
Deathcore horses and Lincoln? What the fuck? Burn him.
I don't know how you got me here, but, thank you.
I guess Laura's world is like Star Wars, where people speak two different languages to each other and understand everything.
As someone who's tried to learn to speak multiple languages, let me tell you that if both people having a conversation know some but not much of the other person's language, then both speaking your own language is the easiest way to communicate by far.
No comprende.
You are dying.
Were you just speaking Spanish out of spite?
She said 3 English words, therefore must be able to speak all of English because that's how language works.
This movie suddenly got all hook on my ass.
The phrase hook on my ass. And its associated mental image.
Could have called this movie Logan. Logan Waking Up a Bunch. And while that's a title for marketing purposes, it would be an accurate one.
Yeah! Fuck this movie for all of those waking up scenes.
I've heard people too.
This little girl, she kills this role. She's so awesome I'll take off yet another sin.
Yup. Although personally, if I was making this Sins video, I would have taken this sin off when she's delivering her monologue at the end, which is really, really well acted, but this is fine too.
This is a cool shot, but this is the first time in the entire movie the bad guys have used drones. Why wouldn't they have surveilled the farmhouse by drone earlier, or the original Mexican compound Logan called home?
We don't know they didn't do that.
Also, why doesn't this drone look cooler?
Because you touch yourself at night.
So this is a touching moment, and the movie can be praised for actually killing big characters during it. But as much as I love Laura turning this cross to make it look like an X, couldn't they have taken him across the border and buried him in Canada, his place of birth? I mean, the guy gets buried 500 feet away from his home country, and I'm supposed to be moved? You dragged him into a stolen truck, Laura. You have the ability.
And you can tell they didn't do that because of the massive "This is not Canada" sign you can see on screen right now. Also, I'm absolutely sure he would have mentioned that Canada was his place of birth, because, you know, why would he not mention that while he's on the run for his life? And the sin total was 34 sins. And the punishment can be clips taken out of context. So you can say, ew, gross, all you want, but I say, bring on the pee. I'm now back in England with my proper editing software, so I'll now be able to pay a lot more attention to Patreon requests. If you don't know, by the way, I have a Patreon, I'll link it on screen. By the way, while I'm here, I would just like to mention I'm absolutely blown away by just how generous you guys have been with my Patreon. It really, really means a lot. Although, if you're not donating, that's also completely fine. Please don't feel obliged. It's completely optional, and I can't stress that enough. Oh, by the way, one of the Patreon rewards I offer is the ability to make me include any image you want me to in one of my videos. And, here's the first one of those. I've also got an image I'd quite like to include today. I'm fully aware, by the way, that it's going to be completely dated in just like a couple of weeks, but I like it. In other news, there should be a new series starting this Sunday. And I think that's just about everything I've got to talk about today, so let's move on to a quickie review. So, let's be honest, I probably don't have to tell you how good Logan was. It was fucking amazing. Seeing Wolverine, a man we're used to seeing as this ultra-powerful being who deals with world-ending events, suddenly having to deal with his own mortality, something that he probably didn't even ever expect to have to deal with, is honestly a real stroke of genius. Honestly, I think that telling a bigger story here would have been a huge mistake. It's not about saving the world anymore. It's not even about saving a city. It's about saving a few kids from slavery. And taking that step back from what we're used to in the X-Men franchise really made this feel final. It's a climax, but not to a story that ends with a bang. A story that ends with a whimper. And that, honestly, is fucking great. One of the main highlights of the film for me was, of course, Laura, and the very visceral action that both she and Wolverine bring to the table is honestly really engaging. It's very different from the action you get in, say, the MCU films, which, although that's fun to watch, it really doesn't have the same impact to it. Take the Thor vs Hulk fight in Ragnarok, for example. Although it's a really fun watch, they bash each other so much without any physical injury to either of them. From that fight, you get the sense that they could both try to kill each other for hours on end and both be fine by the end of it. Logan is different. Even though our two main characters heal, because of the nature of the action, you really get a sense that everything is doing damage. And that's one of the main things I really love about this film. Another thing I really appreciate about this film is just how good it is at telling you things without telling you the things. For example, the film never tells you how long Laura has been hunted, but from little details like how when she gets shot in the arm, she immediately just bites the bullet out without a second thought, you get a real sense that she's used to this. And there are loads of things like that throughout the whole film, and you just really get a sense that this is a real breathing world. That's basically everything I have to say about the film, although if I did finish up this review without mentioning how just fucking pretty the film is, I'd feel like I was doing it an injustice. Oh, also the idea of giving Professor X a degenerative brain disorder is inspired. But anyway, those were just my thoughts. Now let's move on to an end segment. So recently I did an end segment where I went to a deep learning AI, and I fed it all of the scripts I've ever written for CinemaSins that I've kept, which is like most of them, by the way. And I got the AI to generate some CinemaSins sins of its own. Here's what it came up with. The only reason for being a dick is that I just quite like sex. This is not a coincidence, and I'm just going to remove this potato from Tatooine. Bringing your father was literally enjoyable. Also, those words in that sin were bad. Benedict Cumberbatch is the only thing in memes. Spider-Man with the metric system. America. Under the cape there is a brick, because I can kill John. Sorry, John. You can see the bottom of the big virgin. This is not a sin, and pedophilia is really mean. Bringing your leg is the only way to make $10 million. Fuck, I forgot mine at home. Jeremy, what the fuck are you bringing to the zoo? Because it's disgusting. Elves and explosions. There is no global world. Flat Earth. Naboo. Spider-Man Homecoming. This is a satirical apocalypse? Well, clearly you're the fuck who thinks that Earth is still. What's with all this fucking flat Earth shit? Technology. It was nothing but flashbacks. You would literally have had to have sex in the Death Star. This movie is trash. Hitler. Aliens that are obviously jokes too seriously either. Okay. And finally, Chuckles the fuck character is a blatant ripoff of the same species. He must be the only barrel. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that end segment. And just one last thing before I go, it's time for a teaser. See if you can guess what movie I'll be sending the Sins video of next week based on these clues. Here's a frame from some point at the beginning of the movie, and here's the actual thumbnail from the CinemaSins video, except it's been blurred and the colours have been inverted. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you Sunday, and also next week.